Oh my goodness. What's up, friends? Graham Baldwin here today, joined by my dear friend, Miss Nicole Walters. And as much as we're kind of smiling and giggling, we're going to talk about a kind of a heavy topic today, a serious topic. But nonetheless, Nicole, it always brings me so much joy to see you. You are a fan favorite here in the Baldwin home by both my wife and myself. I know that you like my wife way better than me. Most people do, and that's fine. But for people who, before we get into what we're going to be discussing, for people who aren't familiar with you, give us a quick nutshell of what all you do. You do speaking. You've got a couple different coaching and course programs. You have a new TV show, which you just announced. So I know we can talk about that now. Coming out on USA Network. When will that be out?
Well, we don't have an official air date, but let's just say sooner than later. So
is that all you can tell us?
That is all I can say right now. Yes.
Okay. All right. I want the full scoop later, but we won't have to get into that now.
Totally.
All right. So what's the nutshell of Nicole Walters Enterprises? What all do you have your hands on?
Sure. So my name is Nicole Walters. For anyone who's new around there and hasn't met me before, I am a business consultant. So I help you. I worked for corporate America for 10 years, helping build businesses, scale them from 2 million to 200 million. And now I do it for the everyday entrepreneur. So I do that through my business education firm, Inherit Learning Company. And we have digital online products. We have in-person experiences. And we also do small group coaching and then one-to-one coaching for our high net worth clients. So I have a consulting firm. That's what I do. That's how I make my money. That's how I pay for these wigs and keep the skin flawless. And then on the day-to-day, I'm Nicole Walters, and I manage my my family somewhat okay. I manage myself much worse, and I just barely keep it together. And all these two things come together on my TV show on USA Network. And I'm excited about it because you guys get to see how I balance it all or don't.
To be determined.
To be determined.
Well, I appreciate you taking a minute. We've known each other for a few years. I remember when we first met, we were at a conference together, and we were at a maybe a speaker lunch or something.
Yeah.
And sat across the table from each other. I was like, "This girl is a spitfire. She is."
You didn't say anything. For the record, I left there like, that man does not like me. I do not know what happened. I was team too much. You just sat there the whole time like, judgy face the whole time.
Not at all. That's not true. That is completely inaccurate. But we have fallen in love with you.
Yeah,
you're amazing. And so you do a lot with speaking. We've and obviously with everything that's happening in the world, we wanted to talk about the issue of race and racism, especially in the speaking industry. I know we've had a couple conversations even recently. A week or two ago, we talked for about an hour about this topic, and this is something that is obviously a heavy topic, but it's something that we wanted to address and speak about. So first of all, why don't you kind of give us your perspective, especially over the past few weeks as things have been unfolding and things have been happening. What's kind of your take on what's been happening in the world?
Sure. So I think first things first, I've been speaking for a long time. So what's great is I do command some of the larger, keynote fees, and things of that sort. So I do have a nice range. Like I've seen what it looks like to speak on different levels. And, I've also known that race has been a factor in the speaking world for a really long time, particularly because I tend to be one of the only Black speakers at any event. And I also tend to be, to often go where there may not have been a Black speaker before, so that also is something I've experienced. So I'm familiar with sort of what it looks like there. And obviously I've been Black my whole life. So I also can speak to the civil unrest. And I think the biggest thing that's happening, and that's always really helpful for everyone to know, is it's not new, what's happened. This is basically a slow burn that's always kind of been around where there's been injustice since the beginning of time, and it's been particularly prevalent in the US for the past 400 years since the onset of slavery. But it's also, I think it's just coming to a point where it's getting a peak because new voices are entering the conversation. So this conversation's existed in the Black community for a long time, but it's now getting both a media presence as well as more advocacy and allyship from people who are non-Black, who are saying, you know what, I have Black friends, or I've seen this myself, or I've, witnessed or experienced or had moments, or I believe what I'm hearing. And, I want to lend my voice to the conversation to say, hey, can we do something about this? And I think that's kind of what we're seeing happen now. So same conversation, new voices that are elevating it.
Yeah, one thing that was really helpful for me is, as I think, especially like as a white male,
Hmm.
I will never understand what it's like to live as a black, or as a minority, or as a
Right.
different skin color,
Sure.
male or female. But watching I don't remember if it was a Facebook video or an Instagram video or a
Yeah.
video that you put out, especially when a lot of this was really unfolding
Hmm.
a few weeks ago,
Hmm.
and just kind of understanding. I guess it'd be naive for me to look at someone like yourself and think, well,
Hmm.
Nicole is, yes, she's a black female, but she's
Right.
also,
Really good
she's
looking.
she's
I just
very
wanted
good
to
looking.
finish
She's
your
very
sentence
charismatic.
there.
There you
Yeah.
go. You're jumping in. Thank you. But very charismatic, very likable, very
Mhm.
funny, very humorous. And so surely this doesn't affect her, right?
Sure.
Which is, again,
Sure.
a completely naive thought.
Sure.
But your kind of explanation of just what day-to-day life looks like, I
Hmm.
think, especially like your
Hmm.
explanation of, whenever you're pulled over by a cop, you almost made it sound like you get pulled over regularly.
I do.
I don't
I
know
do.
if
I
that's the
got pulled
case
over
or
this
not.
weekend on my way
Oh
up to
my
camping.
word.
So
Oh
yeah,
my word.
all the time. Hmm.
But just kind of the that this isn't just kind of like something that that may or may not happen in the speaking industry, but
Right.
this is something that you're dealing with
All the time.
every single day, and
Yeah.
your family is dealing with. And so so how, like, since then, do you feel like things in their day-to-day life
Mhm.
has it been any different? Has it improved?
Sure.
Is it
Sure.
more of the same? Is it just
Sure.
people are aware of it but it's still there? What's
Yeah,
kind
so
of
I think that the past couple weeks have been, they kind of, it was a crescendo, right? Like where it's just things got loud, and honestly, it feels like it's simmering off, which is a little worrisome, I think, for the Black community as a whole, because we want injustice and activism to be a habit, not so much a trend. You know what I
yeah,
mean? We want it to be something where people are constantly aware that the person next to them may have a different life and need their help and support. So that's a real thing. But when it comes to the video that I think now it's been seen by just under 5 million people on Facebook, in that video I was describing that very thing where being Black isn't it's not just about the George Floyds. Those are the things that raise it and make it high profile, but it really is about how being Black and prejudice impact me on the day to day.
right,
Everything from the work that I do, and speaking gigs and opportunities in media and profile and PR and things like that, to simple things like I just want to go to the store, and whether or not I encounter a good cop or a bad cop, because I'm not lumping everybody into one, or a good person or a bad person, either way, the anxiety that comes with being Black, there are considerations that I have to take, that people aren't even aware of. So something as simple as I was sharing with you, I went camping this weekend with my girls. We were doing a girls trip, and we were like, we're going to a cabin and it'll be fun, and all of that. But we had to consider that, okay, well, we live in Georgia, which is the South, and some people may not share same views or similar concepts, and we're driving outside of Atlanta, which is a heavily diverse area. Are we comfortable if our car were to, say, break down, or if I need to stop and charge my Tesla, or if I need to do a potty break? Are we comfortable at a rest stop, not just as women, right? Which I think is
yeah,
something that a lot of us can all relate to, right? But also as Black women, knowing that we are out on our own. And if we were to run into someone who isn't so great, not only is that a problem, but would we be safe, and would other people advocate and believe us when we say, hey, help us, we're facing a racism situation, can someone speak on our behalf or support us? And
right,
so these are considerations where if you are white, you may just say to yourself, I'm going camping with my girls, no big deal,
yeah,
and it's that existence that is an emotional and exhausting toll on being Black in America that I think most people want people to understand, is that everything from, I can't even Pinterest a picture of myself eating watermelon without worrying that it'll end up being used for a racist ad. You know what I mean? And everybody loves watermelon. Everybody. You know what I mean?
right,
And so it's like the fact that I can't even use social media like my white counterpart, is just,
right.
it really does show up everywhere. And it's that sort of thing that, like you said, people think, oh, it's untouched for you, but it's like, no, it really is a factor, especially in the speaking world.
So how has this, especially everything that's happened over the past
Mhm.
several weeks, how has this impacted your speaking business? Because I'm assuming it's not the type of thing that race and racism is something that didn't exist, and now all of a sudden it
Right.
does exist. It
Right.
has existed. It's kind of behind the curtain, something that no one really wants
Mhm.
to talk about.
Yeah.
Now that it's kind of more at the forefront on people's radar, How has it affected your speaking business? Has it affected your speaking business? Is there any shifts or conversations that you're having that you're seeing, one way or the other?
Well, there's a couple of different things. So there's the internal and the external, right? So, as somebody who is Black and high profile and has a platform and a TV show, I have to be very careful where I align myself and what those conversations look like. And as a speaker and any speaker, you always want to be careful where you align yourself and where you go for a speaking engagement, things of that sort. So for instance, I'm a Christian, so you may not, well, you may, but you may not see me speaking at Atheist R Us. You know what I mean? Like, because there may not be alignment, you just want to think that through, right? Not that I'm afraid to go where I'm not invited, but that sort of thing. But so right now, one of the things that's been a factor for me is whenever I'm either booking new engagements or looking at engagements that may have already been on the books, I actually have to look at that company's stance in relation to racial injustice. Now, that's something I've always considered, and most, Black speakers do. Kind of what's the makeup of this team? What's their executive team look like? These are actually things we look at all the time, Black people in general, when it comes to spending our dollar and places we align ourselves with. But it is something that now, how they've spoken up and addressed things that have happened recently is a factor, and it's a factor for two reasons. One, because, I want to support and align companies that I know are filled with people who would say, hey, Nicole, something's happened to Nicole. We love Nicole. We want to make sure we help and support her, and that's important. But the other side of it is I also want to make sure I'm not aligning myself with companies that believe that booking a Black speaker is going to provide a quick, absorption of responsibility. Like, I don't want them to feel like, oh, well, we put a Black face out there. See, guys, we're not racist. We have a Black friend. You know what I mean? Because that's not what that is. You got to do the work also. And so it's a balance, because I do want to encourage people to book more Black speakers. I just want them to do that and also take other steps to make sure they're really absorbing the lessons, helping the community, and also benefiting their own audiences by getting them a diverse and inclusive perspective.
So because you've worked with a lot of different events, you've worked with a lot of different event planners. And so there is kind of this challenge right now of finding the balance of, being inclusive. And so we want to have a phenomenal speaker like Nicole on our stage, who happens to be a Black female.
Right.
And so the balance of, we want to do this, but we don't want it to be misinterpreted for the wrong reasons.
Right.
Or we want to say something, but we don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yep.
Or it can be, misconstrued or taken out of context. Sure. Or I know, especially a couple of weeks ago, there were several mutual friends of ours who would say something, and we know them. We know that they said things with the right heart and the right spirit, but maybe came across wrong, and just big, heavy backlash. And so it almost feels like, oh my gosh, I don't want to say anything, or I don't want to say the wrong thing, or I want to hire the speaker for the right reason, but I'm afraid it's going to be misinterpreted. So how can speakers, event planners, entrepreneurs, just navigate that balance of wanting to do things, but not wanting to be misinterpreted?
Sure. I think that, I can speak for as much as I know. It obviously varies for everyone. And I know that in particular within the Black community, I don't want to say that what I give is what's the answer for everyone, because people have different perspectives, right? Based on their own emotional trauma, their own journey, what have you. That said, I personally am a big believer that if the worst thing to do is to say nothing at all, and, because we're all aware that we're going to make mistakes and things like that. Now, when it comes to granting grace, I'm not going to say that is deserved, required, or necessary. For me, I'm a grace giver. That's like part of my nature, but it isn't something that I expect or require a Black community that's been oppressed for 400 plus years to instantly be like, I'm sorry that you just realized racism's real and you didn't say something right, and I'm upset about it. Like, now I need to hold you while you're going through this difficult thing for the first time in your life. You know what I mean? Like, that's not quite how that works. Right. But, for me, I think one of the best things I recommend is being really honest about that. So one of the things that happened, and like you said, we have a lot of mutual friends that just kind of sort of fumbled, getting through this. And I was like, I wish that you guys had reached out to me, because I would have helped, I would have helped. And I would have said the first thing to do is acknowledge where you are emotionally. Say, this is hard, and I know I am going to say the wrong thing. And what you're witnessing is me making possibly the first mistake of many mistakes as I start learning.
Yeah.
So what you're about to witness is my attempt to make it right. And I am open and receptive to all correction. And I am open and receptive to any feedback.
Yeah.
Here is my statement. If you do that, you're starting off with a level of humility that affords people to know more of your heart than just kind of starting out saying, "Oh my gosh, racism's a real thing. This is crazy. I'm going to make a statement, and I'm going to give money, and I'm going to say that I'm reading these 3 books, and I just discovered these 4 people."
Yeah.
Like just really starting off with humility, saying this is an ongoing process. And then the other thing that I think in the Black community that is a phrase that's become quite popularized is, performative activism, so just making sure that what you're doing isn't just a singular statement, but reflective of trying to change things within the culture of your business. So if you're saying, oh my gosh, I really like when I tell you my inbox being filled with people who have never had not nary a single Black face on their Instagram timeline, social media, podcast, whatever. I mean, literally, like it's so completely white on their platform that the idea that they're in my inbox is almost comical. You know what I mean? This week, because it's like, like here you are reaching out all of a sudden, it's, I get that we all have to start from somewhere, but it needs to be a well-rounded thing. So you can even share your platform or repost other content from Black creators, to start diversifying your own timeline and your suite of business as a step towards starting to bring in new people. So those are some of the things, or like not just having one Black speaker, but, hiring 2 or 3, it helps, it's one of those things that those simple steps, I think, just show like an ongoing desire to make real and lasting change rather than a singular use of a hashtag or a black box or an Instagram post or whatever else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When you're talking to like a potential event planner about an event that you would be speaking at,
Yeah.
how do you kind of get the sense of like, this feels like a genuine event. These are genuine people. I want to be a part of this versus the feeling of like, maybe I am just, to them, I check a box for them. I made they're looking at me as a token Black speaker. How are you just trying to get a read on that? Or like you mentioned, some of it is also looking at the event itself or other speakers that they've had in the past.
So part of it's weird. You're right. Like, you know how you can tell something's off, right? Like that's how racism works, where it's like, something's off, like there's that part of it, right? But it's also one of those things where it's like real change leaves clues. So one, if this is a company that has always at least made some attempt at having inclusive, conversations as well as diversity, and also, seeking out the best in their field, particularly if they have different, color skin, I would see that already. I can Google you, so one of the things that's really evident is, and I think that where a lot of people are getting stuck in or jammed up, existing companies, is that like a swift Google and we can see, your commitment to diversity. So when I look at your company and your board of directors, and your company is 95% women, but your board of director, all the boards you sit on, every community that you work with, every donation you've ever done is 100% white male. But every single year we do an annual mission trip to Kenya where we take lots of pictures with babies and then we come back and post those on social. Like if that is the only place I've ever seen diversity, like I am concerned. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's one of those things where what's great is starting today and starting with this movement, you can start building a portfolio of showing in your true intention, and that is key, so if you've had, if this is truly who you are, it'd be evident in what you're doing. But if it is something that is new, that's okay too. But you're going to want to kick off by acknowledging that, by saying, hey, we botched this. We never even, got this right. We have completely, we basically built a world that was an echo chamber, because I'll go to events and I'll speak and there won't be Black people in the audience, and if there are Black people in the audience, they will be, I'll pick big gigs that are like 5,000 or 15,000 people and there won't be Black people. It'll be 98% white women. And what's always really special, which, to all, the listeners who are, white people who are listening, you'll notice that if there are Black women, they will wait in line to the last minute to come behind you to like shake your hand. And I can't tell you how many times I've been at events where one being like FinCon, which is an event that we did together. Where there's kind of a contingent of, Black FinConners that come every single year. And I was, one of the few major Black, speakers, like main keynotes. And I did the closing keynote and they all stood there and they're like, can we take a picture together? And it was such a, it was a moment, you know, because they were like, we all sat front row, we sat together, we were so excited. We actually told more of our friends you needed to come because we already knew you. Like, it's just, and every time I go, I mean, there'll be a little group of Black men, they'll holler just a little louder, and they're just a little, you know, it's just a whole thing, you know, because they're just so happy to see you. And I just think that that's something that, that energy really means something as a Black speaker, but I also don't want event planners and people who are booking speakers to miss out on, from a business standpoint, the revenue. You know, Black people move trillions of dollars here in the US. Like, our money's good too, right? You know, like, and Black women are becoming entrepreneurs at a rate of, I think it's 9 times the average American. So, you know, that's money missed, you know, but it's also, you know, Black people are also cool. We dance on beat. We know how to clap on the 2s and the 4s. You know, like, I mean, just like it's an energy you want at your event. You know what I mean? Like, if there's ever a song coming on, we'll get people moving. Like, we have a good spirit about us. You need Black people in your crowd. You know, like, I don't know how to bring it. If it's like, if there's even a church moment or a Christian event, you want Black people there, because we will give you affirmation from the crowd. We will be like, come on, like, that's us. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you are a speaker and you are saying, you need to ask yourself, you need to be an ally and say, are there Black people in the crowd? Because I have low self-esteem and I need people shouting back at me. You know what I mean? Because that will help your own event. So, I mean, like, I'm telling you, I just love it. And it makes me sad that it wasn't, you know, like this before, you know, but I'm encouraged about the future, because I think that we're going to really see, I'm hoping we'll see a long and lasting shift that really makes for a better experience, not just for attendees, but also for speakers.
What would you say to minority speakers who may be watching or listening, who are feeling like, I am a minority. I'm not a white male. I don't feel like I have some type of advantage that, that may unfortunately exist in the marketplace, which is completely wrong. But I feel like I'm at a disadvantage because of something that I can't do anything about. What would you say to that speaker who may just feel discouraged?
Yeah, I think that the number one thing I would say to any Black speaker who's listening, and, just girl to girl moment, or guy to girl to guy moment, just letting you guys know, ask for what you're worth. Ask. If there is a place where you should be, go and boldly ask to be there. If there is an amount you should be paid, ask for all of that plus 10% tax. Ask for all of it, every single penny. And if someone says no to you, that's fine. You are the best thing that they've never heard of. And that is the energy that I bring to everything that I do. I am such a good speaker. Literally, my events are awesome. And the idea that people are just now reaching out to me for a keynote, I literally am like, oh, you're going to pay extra. You're going to pay extra. You don't understand. You will pay extra because I am funny. I am good looking. I am smart. You are crazy pants if you weren't booking me before. So that said, yes, I'll do your event. And yes, you will pay extra. And it will be worth every penny. And that is the energy that any Black speaker needs to bring to their event. Because honestly, they've recycled through. There's like a trove of, your go-to high-end speakers that they're always going through. And it's like, look, now's our time. Get in there. You know what I mean? And go for it. So yeah, I'm really excited about what's to come, and I'm really excited that my rate's gone up.
So, okay, I got a couple questions about that.
Yeah.
And again, I'm completely naive here in this question,
Sure.
I think you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
But, okay, let me frame it this way. Let me give you some context. Okay. So let's imagine, for example, there was some, let's take the guy, the pilot who landed the plane on the Hudson, right? Mm-hmm. There's this thing that happened that all of a sudden is top of the radar for something
His name is Sully,
the world. Sully. Yes, that's correct.
Him by name. He's a hero and a saint. His name is Sully.
My bad. He saved all those lives.
Miracle on the Hudson.
That was a great movie. So something like that happens. It's top of people's radar. It becomes a marketing opportunity for him to lean into. Sure. So given this, do you feel like that being a Black speaker in the current climate presents more opportunities that you may have not had? Does it become a marketing advantage for you? And again, I don't say that may be a completely naive, wrong question.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, no, So it's twofold, right? Obviously, it's a opportunity. The opportunity looks different though, because what it is people are landing in my inbox versus me having to go out for them.
Yeah.
But there's a phrase that's commonly said amongst Black women, which is keep that same energy, right? So the energy I had before, just because white people are just discovering me now does not mean I wasn't awesome all the time, right? America was here before Christopher Columbus landed, right? So
Right.
it's one of those things where, yes, I can appreciate that, people are just, getting hip to, Black female speakers and getting hip to, the sheer awesomeness and energy that we bring. But Black Girl Magic been here. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, if you want to pitch yourself more, go ahead and pitch yourself more, but don't ever change your same energy, and long after this dies down or people seem to feel like they've passed the curve, or if some people are foolish enough to go back to their old ways, keep that same energy, bring all of that to your pitches, bring all of that. And I mean, pitching is still a professional thing. State your, your goals and your skills, like get tips from, Grant on how to get yourself out there, use all of that. But there's nothing wrong with sprinkling in there. Look, like I bring a diverse demographic with me. I bring an inclusive audience. Like there's a reason why I know the stat that Black women are becoming entrepreneurs, because people claim to not know that. So it's like, I can fill out an entire event. I go to, I don't even know if people know this, and you probably know this, Grant, but if you are crushing the speaking world in one area, right, and you want to expand, learn Spanish. Now you have a whole other market. You know what I mean? Right. So people are like, oh, how do I double my money? Learn another language. Now you've doubled your money. It's not even that complicated. So it's just like that. Like, as a Black woman, there is a whole market of entrepreneurship things that no one even sees in their algorithm, on their timeline, in their business, where there are specific events that have been created that are massive and bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars, to the Black community, because we don't get invited to know about or attend or have speakers, at these other massive events. So I've been blessed to be able to speak in both of those worlds, and right now I'm saying, hey, let's cross over. Let's go wherever we can go to get the information and the exposure we can. But it doesn't change the fact that, like you said, we've been awesome. You know what I mean? Like, and just keep that same energy.
Right. I got a question about speaking fees before we get there. Again, if anybody that's watching live right now, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the comments or the chat. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. But one of the things that I know we've talked a little bit about is speaking fees. So let's say, for example, you were invited to speak at an event, or you quoted a speaking fee, or they quoted you what their budget was, and it was less than what you were expecting. There's been plenty of times where I know I've lost gigs, you've lost gigs, but I have I don't think I've ever had to question, I think I may have lost that gig because I'm a white male, or they didn't pay me as much as someone else because I'm a white male. And I know that in conversation with you, that is something that you ask yourself maybe regularly. Maybe I didn't get that gig because I'm a Black female, or I didn't get, they didn't offer me as much money, or they pushed back more than maybe if I had been a white female or a white male or someone else. So how do you find the balance of, I know one of the things we were talking about recently on a call was the balance of all of us as entrepreneurs. We're always looking for the best possible deal from any service provider, product, and not always taking into consideration, the demographic. So how are you reconciling in your mind that sometimes maybe I don't get the gig because of my color, and that is completely wrong, and that should never happen, and that should never be something that you even have to think about. And then there's other times where you don't get the gig because you weren't a good fit, or because someone else, they picked someone else and it had nothing to do with anything. So how do you kind of balance that, reconcile that in your mind?
Well, I think some of it is, again, like, history leaves clues, right? So you can always see people's commitment. So if I notice that an event that's been going on for 5, 6, 7 years only ever has one Black speaker, and they were quoting me and I didn't get it, and then their one Black speaker is another Black woman who tends to have wigs and very clear skin, I know that it was a replacement gig. Like, it was either going to be me or it was going to be her. You know what I mean? And if I know that her rate was cheaper than mine, then it's like, oh, okay, you just went. And the other thing about that, just to say on the rates thing that people don't realize, Black people, we talk to each other. We have our annual Black meeting where we all get together and we do the electric slide. And we have meetings, we talk to each other. And if you are a high rated, Black keynote speaker, oftentimes it's not uncommon where if I saw so-and-so, speaking at a gig, for me to slide into their DMs or ask a friend who knows them and say, hey girl, like I see that you just did such and such. They're trying to quote me this rate, girl. Is that really what they pay? And then they might say like, oh girl, no, they won't cover your this. They won't do that. Like most speakers speak, but we really, really talk. Do you know what I mean? Because we're trying to get a sense of what's going on out there. Right. So one of the things you want to do is quote us properly based on market rate. So I think that's a huge part of it is, yes, I understand that you want to get a certain, rate, but just really honor what we're bringing to the table, in terms of work and effort and experience, particularly because if you've ever booked us before, right? Or if you've ever had seen our work in a familiar industry. So if, for instance, you speak at one MLM conference and you're speaking at another one, and you know that they were paid this amount or they've gone through this bureau, definitely don't try to, go in at a bottom rate thinking that, oh, well, they don't get that many gigs, so that's not a good, because what I always say, like, they don't count my pockets for me. You know what I mean? Like, you have no idea, what my money looks like. So you could end up with a very swift no and no speaker, and whoever you book that isn't me is not going to be as good. So it's like, now you put yourself in a bind. You know what I mean? You put yourself in a situation, so it's like, come strong, right? So that's the first part. And then the other part is, it is frustrating. I don't know if I'll ever be in a place where I'll completely say, okay, race wasn't even a factor at all. I wish I could, but that's the nature of being Black. I want to be able to, I wish I knew what that felt like. You know what I mean? To go places and, to stand in line and, at a store and have someone cut me off and then not have them, not have it feel like it was a race thing, or to not get a job and think that it's not because of the way your name sounds or because you're African, or, you just hope that these things don't happen. But, when it comes to the rate and the speaking gig, a good friend of mine told me one time, he's a good friend, but he's weird. But he basically told me at one point, just decide what it's worth to you and then go in there and ask for that and ask for all of it. And I said, add 10% tax. So, because we all struggle with our worth sometimes. So I just go ahead and add a little extra, and that's what that looks like. And I felt really good about that response and that technique and that tactic. Recently, I had a situation where I found out that I was paid 1/10 of what the previous speaker, had gotten that year. And usually in terms of race things, that's the type of thing that makes you wonder, because it's such a huge disparity. It's not because I got less, but it's just such a huge disparity. But that said, when I went back and asked, and then I went back and I said, hey, I'd like the difference, like, and it should look like this. And they were like, absolutely not. And I was like, perfect. Like, now I know, I'll honor my contract. I'll be done with the gig, and that'll just be that. Like, that'll just be that. I move on with my life, and eventually when they bring back VH1 Behind the Scenes, it'll just be a little segment, where everyone talks about it. President Walters, was previously, rejected from this position, and we don't even know. I mean, it was such an embarrassing moment from now defunct company, like, it's just like, so it's just one of those things,
What can the speaking community at large, especially whenever it comes to white speakers who will never fully understand what it is like to be a minority speaker, what can just the speaking community at large do to better support minority speakers, minority colleagues? I've seen you speak multiple times. We've done some stuff together. I've seen other minority speakers who are phenomenal speakers. Doesn't matter, their gender or the race, just amazing speakers. And so how can speakers of any color really support minority speakers? Right.
So I think one of the things, and you do this really, really well, but I actually don't even think you do it for race reasons. I think you do it just because you're like, this is a good speaker and they need speakers, and you always know a bunch of speakers, right? But recommend speakers of color. So like, that's a thing that I don't think people do it automatically, but if you see that they a friend of yours is putting together a gig, a summit, or whatever, and they have no Black speakers on there, instantly think of your Black friend. Do you know what I mean? And because now you're helping out your Black friend and your other friend, because you're helping them create a history that leaves clues as to who they really are. So it's an easy thing to do. Help them, put some diversity and inclusion into their space. That's a simple one. A big bigger thing to do, which I think that everyone has to reconcile what's comfortable for them, but Black people really appreciate it, and it gets you a lot of points with us, is, and you want points with Black people. We're fun to know, you know, like you want points. It's always a good thing to stock up on, you know. But that said, you know, is to build up points is, if you are booked for a gig, to mention that, you know, to say like, hey, you know, which can be scary because I do recognize you're like, this is my livelihood and I'm getting paid. I don't want to ruffle any feathers, you know. But if you're like, hey, I'm on a gig and I recognize that everybody here is white, you know, just say like, hey, I just want to, you know, make a point to let you guys know that I do like to do events that are very diverse. So I'm hoping you're intending on bringing on more, you know, diverse speakers. And if you need some recommendations, I'd be happy to help. Just saying that sentence is so tremendous because, again, you know, you really are being a value add to that company. And furthermore, you're also promoting that this is who you are, you know, and that word gets around also, you know, so, you know, and it's helpful. And then also, you know, more than one Black speaker would be great. You know, a diverse, you know, some females would be great, you know, just make it look good, you know. Black people like, we like 2 to 3, feel safer. That's what I was saying. So,
well, Nicole, thank you so much for the time. I always enjoy chatting with you. It always puts a smile on my face as I know everybody else listening.
I know. Can you imagine we could talk about race and laugh? I tell you, we're in such a good place now. Thank God, America. It's so nice that we can all laugh at Black jokes together now. Like, this is so great. No, we still have work to do. If anything, if there's a final note for everyone, it's don't let up the seam. Don't take your foot off the gas. Like, what's great is we're all in it together. So let's stay in this together. You know, like we can laugh together and be a little closer, but at the end of the day, keep doing the work because there's still progress to be made.
Nicole, thank you so much. I have the utmost admiration and respect for you. If people want to find out more about you and what you're up to, where can we go?
You can go to NicoleWalters.com. You can also watch my show on USA Network in the very near future. We're finishing up recording now or filming now. And that's it. And you can catch me on a stage near you. Apparently, we're a hot commodity right now.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.